Every square inch of your skin carries more living bacteria than the total number of humans who have ever walked this planet. In fact, if you tried to count them one by one, spending just 1 second per bacterium, it would take you over 30,000 years to finish. These invisible neighbors outnumber every star you can see in the night sky, every grain of sand on your favorite beach. They've been perfecting the art of peaceful coexistence for 3.5 billion years. And tonight, they're here with you, quietly going about their ancient work as you prepare for sleep. Before we explore this microscopic universe together, hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss more amazing stories tomorrow. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let's enter the invisible garden. Close your eyes and imagine shrinking down, smaller than a grain of sand, smaller than a speck of dust, down to a scale where the invisible becomes visible. Here, in this microscopic realm, you'd find yourself in the most populated place in existence. The surface of your skin alone hosts roughly 1 trillion bacteria. That's more individual organisms than there are stars in the Andromeda galaxy, all living peacefully on an area no bigger than your hand. But these aren't invaders or parasites. They're gardeners, tending to the landscape of you. Each species has its preferred spot, its favorite conditions. Some thrive in the oily zones of your forehead. Others prefer the dry deserts of your forearms. The warm, moist valleys between your toes host entirely different communities than the cool plains of your back. It's a garden of invisible life, each organism quietly doing its work, maintaining balance without your awareness or effort. These bacteria aren't frantically racing around. They move slowly, purposefully, dividing when conditions are right, resting when they're not. A single bacterium might divide once every 20 minutes under perfect conditions, but often they simply exist, performing their gentle chemical work, breaking down oils, producing protective compounds, communicating with neighbors through molecular whispers. The beauty of this invisible garden is its patience. Bacteria don't rush. They've spent 3.5 billion years perfecting the art of simply being. While empires rose and fell, while continents shifted and species evolved and went extinct, bacteria remained, adapting slowly, changing gradually, never hurrying, never panicking. Your skin isn't the only garden. The air around you contains thousands of bacterial cells in every breath you take. They float gently, suspended on invisible currents, traveling from surface to surface, room to room, carried on dust particles like passengers on tiny ships. Most are completely harmless, just passing through, existing in their quiet way. Even the objects around you, your pillow, your sheets, the walls of your room, all host their own bacterial communities. These microscopic ecosystems exist in every corner of Earth, from the highest mountains to the deepest ocean trenches. They're the planet's original inhabitants, and they've made everywhere home. This invisible garden surrounds you completely, a living web of ancient organisms that have witnessed the entire history of complex life on Earth. And the most remarkable part is how peaceful it all is. Despite their overwhelming numbers, despite being literally everywhere, bacteria don't demand your attention. They simply exist alongside you, their presence so gentle that you've gone your entire life barely thinking about them. They're content to remain unseen, working quietly in the background, maintaining the invisible garden that makes your life possible. These microscopic gardeners living on your skin are just a tiny fraction of something much bigger. If you could gather every bacterium on Earth and place them on a cosmic scale, they would outweigh every plant, every animal, every insect combined. All the elephants and whales, all the forests and jungles, every bird in the sky and fish in the sea. They don't even come close to matching the collective weight of bacteria. Scientists estimate that bacteria make up about 1.2 trillion pounds of living matter on our planet. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 400 times the weight of every human currently alive. All 7 billion of us, standing together on one side of a scale, wouldn't budge the needle against the bacterial kingdom on the other side. But here's what makes this fact so calming. Despite their overwhelming presence, bacteria don't conquer or dominate. They simply exist, quietly performing their work in every environment imaginable. They're not trying to take over. They're not competing for space. They've already been everywhere for billions of years, and they've learned that patience and cooperation work better than aggression. Most of this bacterial biomass lives in places you'll never see. Deep in the soil beneath your feet, miles down in ocean sediments, inside the tissues of every plant and animal. They form an invisible foundation that supports all visible life. Without their constant, gentle work, the entire pyramid of life would collapse. Think about the soil in a garden. A single teaspoon contains more bacteria than there are people on Earth. They're breaking down dead leaves, recycling nutrients, creating the rich darkness that feeds new growth. They do this work continuously, without rest, without recognition, transforming death into life in an endless, peaceful cycle. In the oceans, bacteria make up the majority of living biomass. They float in every drop of seawater, so numerous that if you could see them all at once, the ocean would appear cloudy. Yet the water remains clear because they're so small, so perfectly adapted to their liquid home. They harvest energy from sunlight, produce oxygen, feed larger organisms, all while weighing collectively more than every fish, whale, and coral in the sea. Even in the air you breathe, bacteria add to this massive global weight. Though each one is incredibly light, their numbers are so vast that together they form a significant portion of Earth's atmospheric biomass. They travel on wind currents, crossing continents and oceans, settling gently wherever conditions allow, adding their microscopic weight to the local bacterial community. The remarkable thing about this enormous biomass is how efficiently bacteria exist. They need very little to survive. No complex organs, no nervous systems, no bones or muscles. Just a simple cell wall, some genetic material, and the basic machinery to convert nutrients into energy. This simplicity allows them to thrive everywhere, to adapt to anything, to persist when other life forms fail. They've achieved something no other form of life has managed: total planetary coverage at massive scale, while remaining almost invisible, almost weightless individually, yet collectively forming the heaviest living presence on Earth. And they've done it all without noise, without disruption, just quiet, steady existence over billions of years. As you lie here tonight, remember that beneath you, above you, around you, this enormous living mass continues its ancient work. Not threatening, not invading, just being, just existing in perfect balance with everything else. The weight of bacterial life is the weight of stability itself, a foundation so solid that all other life rests upon it without worry. While bacteria dominate the planet's biomass, the most intimate relationship they have is with you. Your body isn't just a home for human cells. It's a walking ecosystem hosting roughly 39 trillion bacterial cells. That number is so close to your 30 trillion human cells that you're essentially half bacteria, half human. You're not one organism, you're a cooperative community. This might sound unsettling at first, but it's actually the most natural arrangement in the world. You were never meant to be alone in your own body. From the moment you were born, bacteria began colonizing your skin, your mouth, your digestive system. Your mother's bacteria were your first gift, transferred during birth, seeding your body with the microbial partners you'd need for life. Your gut alone contains about 100 trillion bacteria, outnumbering all the cells in the rest of your body combined. They line your intestines in a thick, living carpet, forming a barrier between you and the outside world. This barrier isn't just physical. These bacteria actively protect you, crowding out harmful species, producing compounds that keep dangerous microbes at bay, training your immune system to recognize friend from foe. Every meal you eat feeds both you and them. They break down fibers your own cells can't digest, releasing nutrients your body absorbs. They produce vitamins you can't make yourself, including vitamin K for blood clotting and several B vitamins for energy and nerve function. Without these bacterial partners, you'd be malnourished no matter how much you ate. But their contribution goes deeper than nutrition. Your gut bacteria communicate directly with your brain through the vagus nerve, sending chemical signals that influence your mood, your sleep patterns, even your food cravings. They produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, the same chemicals your brain uses to regulate happiness and motivation. About 90% of your body's serotonin is actually made in your gut, with bacterial assistance. Your skin bacteria are equally important partners. They consume the oils and sweat your skin produces, preventing harmful species from gaining a foothold. They produce natural antibiotics that kill dangerous microbes before they can cause infection. They even help regulate your skin's pH, keeping it slightly acidic to discourage pathogenic growth. Your skin isn't just protected by bacteria, it's actively defended by them every second of every day. In your mouth, bacterial communities form complex ecosystems on your teeth, tongue, and gums. While some can cause problems if allowed to overgrow, most are simply maintaining balance, processing food particles, preventing worse species from taking hold. They're part of your first line of defense against infection, part of your digestive process, part of what makes you, you. The fascinating part is how stable these communities are. The bacterial populations in your gut today are largely the same ones that were there years ago. They've adapted to your diet, your lifestyle, your particular body chemistry. They know you better than you know yourself, responding to changes in your health before you even notice symptoms. You don't maintain these relationships consciously. you don't direct bacteria where to go or what to do. They organize themselves, finding their preferred locations, establishing territories, cooperating with neighboring species, all without your awareness. It's a self-regulating system that's been perfecting itself since before humans existed as a species. As you settle in for sleep tonight, your bacterial partners continue their work. They don't need your attention or concern. They simply exist alongside you, inside you, as much a part of you as your own cells, quietly maintaining the complex balance that keeps you healthy and alive. Your bacterial companions didn't just evolve alongside humans. They were here first, billions of years before anything resembling you existed. Bacteria are Earth's original inhabitants, the architects who built the planet you know today. They didn't just witness history, they created the conditions that made all other life possible. About 3.5 billion years ago, when Earth was still a young, hostile world, bacteria were already thriving. The atmosphere contained almost no oxygen back then. It was filled with methane, ammonia, and carbon dioxide, a poisonous mix that would kill you in seconds. Oceans were greenish-brown, the sky was orange, and nothing remotely like modern life could survive. But bacteria didn't just survive, they flourished in this alien world. Then something remarkable happened. A group of bacteria called cyanobacteria developed the ability to harvest energy from sunlight through photosynthesis. They were the first organisms to crack this code, the first to turn light into life. As they multiplied across the ancient oceans, they began releasing oxygen as a waste product, molecule by molecule, breath by breath. This wasn't a quick process. It took roughly 2 billion years for these patient microbes to transform Earth's atmosphere. 2 billion years of steady work, generation after generation, each bacterium contributing its tiny portion of oxygen to the growing atmospheric store. They didn't rush. They couldn't rush. They simply existed, photosynthesizing, releasing oxygen, dying, being replaced by new generations that continued the work. At first, the oxygen they produced reacted immediately with dissolved iron in the oceans, creating massive rust deposits that still exist today as banded iron formations. For hundreds of millions of years, the oceans essentially absorbed every molecule of oxygen bacteria produced. The atmosphere didn't change at all during this time, yet the bacteria kept working, kept producing, kept adding oxygen that seemed to vanish. Eventually, around 2.4 billion years ago, the oceans became saturated with oxygen. There was nowhere left for it to go except up into the atmosphere. This moment, called the Great Oxidation Event, was the most significant transformation in Earth's history. The sky slowly shifted from orange to blue. The air became breathable for the first time, though it would take another billion years to reach modern oxygen levels. This change was catastrophic for many bacteria. Oxygen was toxic to most organisms at the time. The Great Oxidation Event caused the first mass extinction, wiping out countless bacterial species that couldn't adapt to the new chemical reality. Yet, the cyanobacteria continued their work, unbothered by the revolution they'd caused, just doing what they'd always done, converting sunlight into energy, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. The oxygen atmosphere enabled everything that came after. Complex cells evolved, using oxygen to generate enormous amounts of energy. Animals emerged, breathing the air bacteria had spent billions of years creating. Plants evolved, partnering with bacteria to fix nitrogen and cycle nutrients. Human civilization rose and fell countless times, all made possible by bacterial patience. Even today, cyanobacteria continue this ancient work. They still photosynthesize in oceans and lakes, still produce oxygen, still maintain the atmospheric balance they created over geological time. They've been at it for 3.5 billion years and show no signs of stopping. It's the longest continuous project in the history of life, performed by the smallest workers imaginable. When you breathe tonight, you're breathing the product of this unimaginably long bacterial effort. Every oxygen molecule in your lungs was placed there by photosynthetic organisms, many of them bacteria, working with the same patient dedication they've shown since Earth was young. After spending billions of years building Earth's atmosphere, bacteria turned their attention to another essential task: transforming death into life. Every fallen leaf, every dead animal, every bit of waste that touches the ground becomes part of an invisible recycling system powered almost entirely by bacteria. Without their constant work, death would pile up endlessly, and life would grind to a halt. Walk through a forest, and you'll see the surface covered in fallen leaves, branches, and organic debris. But dig down just a few inches, and it's all gone, transformed into rich, dark soil. That transformation happens because soil bacteria are breaking down every molecule of dead matter, converting complex organic compounds into simple nutrients that plants can absorb and use again. A single gram of forest soil contains up to 1 billion bacteria. They live in the spaces between soil particles, coating surfaces with thin films of moisture where they can move and feed. Each species specializes in breaking down particular compounds. Some target cellulose from plant cell walls. Others decompose proteins from dead animals. Still others break down fats, waxes, and complex carbohydrates that nothing else can touch. This decomposition isn't violent or chaotic. It's methodical, almost gentle. Bacteria secrete enzymes that break large molecules into smaller pieces, then absorb those pieces and convert them into even simpler forms. Carbon dioxide returns to the air. Nitrogen becomes ammonia, then nitrates that plants can use. Phosphorus and sulfur, and all the other elements essential for life, return to the soil in forms that roots can absorb. The speed of this process depends entirely on bacterial activity. In warm, moist tropical soils, bacteria work quickly, breaking down a fallen leaf in weeks. In cold, dry environments, decomposition slows to a crawl, taking years for the same work. But the bacteria never stop completely. Even in frozen Arctic soils, some bacterial species remain active, working slowly in thin films of liquid water that persist even below freezing. This recycling system is perfectly efficient. Nothing is wasted. A tree absorbs nutrients from soil, builds those nutrients into wood and leaves, then drops those leaves back to the ground where bacteria convert them back into nutrients. The same atoms cycle through this process thousands of times. used by countless organisms, always returning to the soil, always made available again by bacterial decomposition. Your own body will eventually join this cycle. When you die, soil bacteria will gently reclaim every atom you borrowed during your life, returning them to the earth where they'll become part of new living things. It's not morbid. It's the most natural process imaginable. The way life has worked since bacteria first evolved the ability to break down complex organic matter billions of years ago. Even human-made organic materials eventually succumb to bacterial decomposition. Wood buildings slowly rot as bacteria break down cellulose. Natural fabrics decay over years or decades. Only artificial materials like plastics resist this process. And even then, scientists are discovering bacterial species that have evolved the ability to break down some synthetic compounds. The soil beneath you right now is alive with this activity. Bacteria are processing yesterday's fallen leaves, last year's dead roots, centuries-old organic matter buried deep in the earth. They work in darkness, without oxygen, without light, converting death into the nutrients that will feed tomorrow's growth. It's a peaceful, necessary process, as old as life itself, as constant as the seasons. As you close your eyes tonight, remember that this cycle continues beneath you, around you, everywhere on Earth. Bacteria quietly completing nature's circle, ensuring that nothing is ever truly lost, that every ending becomes a beginning. Bacteria accomplish all this work, building atmospheres, recycling nutrients, maintaining ecosystems, without a single word, without a sound. Yet they're constantly communicating with each other through a sophisticated chemical language that predates every other form of communication on Earth. They don't shout or signal frantically. They simply release molecules into their environment and wait patiently for responses. This process is called quorum sensing, and it's how bacteria make collective decisions. A single bacterium releases small molecules called autoinducers that diffuse slowly through water or across surfaces. Other bacteria of the same species detect these molecules and release their own. As the population grows, the concentration of autoinducers increases until it reaches a threshold, a quorum that tells every bacterium in the community that they've achieved critical mass. Once quorum is reached, the entire bacterial population changes its behavior simultaneously. They might start producing bioluminescent compounds, creating visible light where there was darkness. They might begin forming a biofilm, a protective community structure. They might activate genes for producing antibiotics or for swimming toward nutrients. It's coordinated group action without any central command, just patient chemical conversation until consensus emerges. The remarkable thing about this communication is its gentleness. There's no urgency, no panic. Molecules diffuse at their own pace, spreading gradually through the bacterial community. Bacteria don't check constantly for signals. They simply respond when concentrations reach appropriate levels. If conditions aren't right, they wait. If the population is too small, they continue their individual work until enough neighbors gather. Different bacterial species use different chemical languages, but some have learned to eavesdrop on each other's conversations. They detect the autoinducers of other species and adjust their behavior accordingly. a harmful species might detect the presence of beneficial bacteria and decide to remain dormant. A beneficial species might sense danger and strengthen its defenses. It's interspecies communication happening continuously at scales we can't see. Your gut bacteria engage in these chemical conversations constantly. They're monitoring each other's populations, coordinating digestive processes, maintaining the balance that keeps you healthy. When you eat, certain species detect nutrients and signal others that food is available. When harmful bacteria try to invade, resident species detect the threat and communicate warnings, ramping up antibiotic production collectively. Even across vast distances, bacteria communicate through these molecular messages. In the ocean, bacteria separated by meters of water can coordinate behaviors, creating synchronized patterns of bioluminescence that ripple through the dark depths. They're not organizing through rapid signals, but through patient molecular accumulation, each bacterium contributing its chemical voice to the growing conversation. This communication system evolved over 3 billion years ago and hasn't needed much updating since. It's efficient, reliable, and doesn't require the energy-intensive nervous systems that animals developed much later. Bacteria solved the problem of group coordination at the very beginning of life, and their solution still works perfectly. The chemicals involved are simple, just small molecules, but the information they carry is sophisticated. Concentration indicates population density. Chemical composition identifies species. Rate of change suggests growth or decline. From these simple signals, bacteria extract complex information about their environment and their community's status. Tonight, as your body rests, trillions of bacteria are engaged in these quiet chemical conversations. In your gut, on your skin, in your mouth, they're sending molecules back and forth, coordinating their activities, maintaining the communities that keep you alive. They don't need your input or awareness. They've been having these conversations since long before humans existed, and they'll continue long after we're gone. While most bacteria thrive in moderate conditions, some have mastered the art of living in places that would kill almost anything else. These extremophiles inhabit Earth's most challenging environments, not through struggle or constant adaptation, but through perfect, peaceful accommodation to conditions that seem impossible. They found calm in places we'd consider hellish. In the hot springs of Yellowstone National Park, bacteria live in water that reaches 200 degrees Fahrenheit. The water is acidic enough to dissolve metal, yet these thermophiles, heat-loving bacteria, float serenely in the boiling pools. They've adapted their cell membranes to remain stable at temperatures that would cook most organisms instantly. Their enzymes function optimally at heat levels that would denature ordinary proteins. They don't fight the heat, they've made it their home. These hot springs glow with brilliant colors, oranges and yellows and greens, all created by different bacterial species, adapted to slightly different temperature ranges. The hottest water near the spring's source hosts one set of species. As the water cools flowing outward, different bacteria take over, each finding its perfect temperature zone. They've divided the environment, not through competition, but through specialization, each species claiming the conditions it handles best. Deep in the ocean, bacteria thrive near hydrothermal vents, where superheated water erupts from cracks in the seafloor. The pressure at these depths would crush a human instantly, but bacteria don't even notice. They've never known anything else. They cluster around the vents, harvesting energy from chemicals in the hot water, building entire ecosystems in absolute darkness. They're the foundation of life in these deep-sea oases, feeding tube worms and crustaceans that can't survive anywhere else. At the opposite extreme, bacteria live in Antarctic ice. Some species remain active at temperatures well below zero, their cells producing antifreeze proteins that prevent ice crystals from forming inside them. They live in thin films of liquid water that persist in tiny pores within the ice, spaces so small you couldn't see them without a microscope. Life moves slowly here, but it continues, patient and persistent. In Chile's Atacama Desert, the driest place on Earth, bacteria survive in soil that might not see rain for decades. They enter dormancy during dry periods, their metabolisms slowing to nearly nothing, then activate quickly when rare moisture arrives. They've mastered the art of waiting, existing in a state between life and death until conditions improve. There's no panic, no desperation, just patient endurance. Even in extremely salty environments, like the Dead Sea, bacteria flourish. Halophiles, salt-loving bacteria, have adapted to water so salty it preserves anything else that falls into it. They balance the salt concentrations inside their cells to match the outside environment, preventing water from being sucked out through osmosis. They've turned a hostile environment into a safe refuge where few competitors can follow. Deep underground, kilometers below Earth's surface, bacteria live in solid rock. They extract energy from minerals and radiation, requiring no sunlight, no organic matter, nothing from the surface world. Some of these subsurface bacteria divide just once every 1,000 years. They experience time on geological scales, individual cells living longer than human civilizations. These extremophiles prove that life doesn't need comfort to be peaceful. Bacteria have found serenity in boiling water, frozen ice, crushing depths, and waterless deserts. They don't complain about conditions. They simply exist, adapted perfectly to their chosen extreme, living as contentedly as bacteria anywhere else. Among all the remarkable adaptations bacteria have developed for extreme environments, perhaps the most beautiful is their ability to produce light. Bioluminescent bacteria glow in the darkness of the deep ocean, creating soft illumination where sunlight has never reached. They don't produce this light for us to admire, but the effect is mesmerizing. Nature's own nightlights floating through the eternal darkness. These glowing bacteria use a chemical reaction involving an enzyme called luciferase. When oxygen interacts with luciferase and a molecule called luciferin, the reaction releases energy as visible light instead of heat. It's cold light, producing no warmth, just a gentle blue-green glow that persists as long as the bacteria have energy to fuel the reaction. The light is soft, never harsh or bright, perfectly suited to the quiet depths where these bacteria live. Many species of fish and squid have formed partnerships with bioluminescent bacteria. The Hawaiian bobtail squid houses colonies of glowing bacteria in a special light organ in its body. At night, when the squid hunts in shallow water, it adjusts the bacterial glow to match the moonlight filtering down from above. This eliminates its shadow, making it invisible to predators looking up from below. The bacteria receive a safe home and steady nutrients, while the squid gains perfect camouflage. Neither organism could achieve this alone. Some deep-sea fish dangle glowing bacterial lures in front of their mouths. The bacteria shine steadily in the darkness, attracting smaller fish that mistake the glow for food. When prey comes close enough, the fish strikes. The bacteria don't participate in the hunt consciously. They simply glow because that's what they do, and the fish has evolved to exploit that natural luminescence. In coastal waters, bioluminescent bacteria sometimes bloom in such numbers that the ocean itself appears to glow. When waves break at night, they sparkle with blue-green light as the turbulence triggers millions of bacteria to activate their luminescence simultaneously. Swimming through these waters creates trails of light, every movement outlined in ghostly radiance. It's one of nature's most peaceful light shows, requiring no electricity, no fire, just bacteria doing what they've done for millions of years. The glow isn't constant. Bacteria use quorum sensing to coordinate their light production, only illuminating when their population reaches critical density. This saves energy, since a single glowing bacterium achieves nothing, its tiny light invisible in the vast darkness. But when millions glow together, their combined light becomes visible, useful, a signal to potential hosts, or a contribution to the community's survival. Scientists have borrowed this bacterial ability, using luciferase genes in research to track cellular processes. The same chemistry that lights up deep-sea fish now helps illuminate cancer cells in laboratories, trace genetic activity in experiments, and study how organisms develop. Bacteria invented bioluminescence hundreds of millions of years ago, and we're still discovering applications for their elegant solution to producing light. In your own body, the bacteria don't glow, but they're just as active, just as essential. The bioluminescent species in the ocean are simply cousins of the bacteria living peacefully within you, all sharing the same ancient lineage, all descended from those first microscopic organisms that appeared billions of years ago. Some evolved to produce light in darkness, others to thrive in your gut, but they're all part of the same vast bacterial family that colonized every possible environment on Earth. Just as some bacteria evolved partnerships with ocean creatures, others formed equally essential relationships with plants. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria perform one of the most crucial tasks in nature, converting atmospheric nitrogen into forms that plants can actually use. Without these bacteria, most of Earth's plant life would slowly starve, no matter how rich the soil appeared. Nitrogen makes up 78% of the atmosphere, surrounding every living thing in abundance. But atmospheric nitrogen exists as N2, two nitrogen atoms bonded so tightly together that plants can't break them apart. It's useless to them in this form, locked away despite being everywhere. Plants need nitrogen to build proteins, DNA, and chlorophyll, but they can't access the massive supply floating right above them. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria solved this problem billions of years ago. They produce an enzyme called nitrogenase that breaks the strong triple bond holding N2 together, converting it into ammonia that plants can absorb through their roots. This process requires enormous amounts of energy, but the bacteria do it constantly, turning the most common gas in our atmosphere into the foundation of plant growth. Some nitrogen-fixing bacteria live freely in soil, processing nitrogen independently and releasing it into the surrounding earth. But many have formed intimate partnerships with plants, particularly legumes like beans, peas, and clover. These plants grow special nodules on their roots, tiny structures that house bacterial colonies in exchange for sugars the plant produces through photosynthesis. Inside these root nodules, bacteria live in near-perfect conditions. The plant provides them with food and protection, maintaining the low oxygen environment that nitrogenase requires to function. In return, the bacteria fix nitrogen directly where the plant needs it most, at its roots. It's a trade agreement that benefits both partners equally, perfected over millions of years of evolution. This partnership is so successful that farmers have used it for thousands of years without understanding the mechanism. Crop rotation, the ancient practice of alternating grain crops with legumes, works because the nitrogen-fixing bacteria in legume roots enrich the soil. After a season of beans or clover, the soil contains more available nitrogen than before, ready to support the next crop. Ancient farmers noticed this pattern and built entire agricultural systems around it, unknowingly collaborating with bacteria. The bacteria don't fix nitrogen constantly. They respond to the plant's needs, increasing activity when nitrogen is scarce, slowing down when it's abundant. This regulation happens through chemical signals between plant and bacteria, another form of peaceful communication that maintains balance without waste or excess. In tropical forests, some trees house nitrogen-fixing bacteria in specialized structures in their leaves rather than roots. These bacteria live inside the leaf tissue, processing nitrogen from the air. The tree breathes in. It's the same partnership in a different location. Proof that once evolution discovers a beneficial arrangement, it finds multiple ways to implement it. The nitrogen these bacteria fix eventually becomes part of every living thing. The proteins in your body contain nitrogen that was likely processed by bacteria at some point, converted from atmospheric gas into a biologically useful form. When you eat plants or animals that ate plants, you're consuming nitrogen that bacteria made available, continuing a cycle that began billions of years ago when the first nitrogen-fixing bacteria evolved this remarkable ability. Tonight, in soil around the world, these bacteria continue their patient work, breaking molecular bonds, fixing nitrogen, feeding plants that will feed the world. They don't rest, but they're never rushed, maintaining the steady rhythm that has sustained life for countless generations. These bacteria working in soil and roots don't operate randomly. They follow schedules, internal rhythms that match Earth's rotation. Even single-celled organisms without brains or nervous systems have learned to keep time, anticipating the cycle of day and night that governs life on this planet. Bacteria possess circadian clocks, biological timekeepers that run on a roughly 24-hour cycle. Cyanobacteria, those ancient oxygen producers, were the first organisms discovered to have circadian rhythms. Scientists found that their genes activate and deactivate in predictable patterns that repeat every 24 hours, even when the bacteria are kept in constant darkness. They're not responding to light changes in the moment. They're following an internal clock that evolved to match Earth's rotation. This clock operates through a feedback loop of just 3 proteins. They interact in a cycle that takes about 24 hours to complete, turning genes on and off in sequence. When protein levels rise high enough, they shut down their own production. When they decay below a certain threshold, production begins again. It's a simple molecular oscillator, elegant in its efficiency, requiring no complex machinery. The bacteria don't keep time for our benefit. These rhythms help them survive by coordinating their activities with predictable environmental changes. Cyanobacteria perform photosynthesis during daylight when sunlight is available, then shift to other metabolic activities at night. By anticipating these transitions, rather than reacting to them, they use energy more efficiently, prepare for changes before they happen. Even bacteria living in your gut maintain circadian rhythms, despite existing in an environment where light never reaches. They synchronize their clocks with your body's rhythms, responding to the regular patterns of feeding and hormones that follow your sleep-wake cycle. Your gut bacteria are more active at certain times of day, preparing for meals they've learned to expect, adjusting their metabolism to match your schedule. This bacterial timekeeping influences your own circadian system. The bacteria in your gut produce compounds that affect your brain's master clock, helping regulate your sleep patterns. When your gut bacteria's rhythms are disrupted, through jet lag or shift work, it can throw off your entire body's timing. The relationship goes both ways, with your circadian system influencing bacterial activity and bacterial rhythms feeding back to influence your sleep and wake cycles. Scientists have found that bacterial circadian clocks are remarkably accurate. In stable conditions, they maintain their roughly 24-hour cycle for days, weeks, even months, without any external time cues. The clock can be reset by environmental signals, light for surface-dwelling bacteria, feeding times for gut bacteria, but once set, it runs faithfully on its programmed schedule. The fact that such simple organisms can measure time reveals something profound about life on Earth. The planet's rotation creates such reliable patterns that even bacteria, existing for billions of years before anything resembling a brain evolved, developed the ability to anticipate daily cycles. Time isn't just a human concept. It's written into the molecular machinery of the simplest life forms. Some researchers believe studying bacterial clocks might help us understand our own circadian systems better. If 3 proteins can create a functional timekeeper in a bacterium, it suggests that biological clocks emerge from relatively simple principles, complexity built on elegant foundations. As you lie here in darkness, your body's bacteria are aware of the time, following their internal schedules, preparing for the long rest period they've learned to expect. They're winding down their daytime activities, shifting to nighttime metabolism, synchronized with your descent into sleep. Even at the microscopic level, life follows the rhythm of Earth's gentle spin. While some bacteria maintain complex internal clocks, others have provided humanity with one of our oldest food preservation methods through a much simpler process. Fermentation bacteria transform fresh milk into yogurt through patient chemical work, creating a food that has sustained cultures for thousands of years. This transformation requires no cooking, no equipment, just bacteria doing what they naturally do, converting lactose into lactic acid. The primary bacteria responsible for yogurt are Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus. When added to warm milk, they begin consuming the lactose sugar, breaking it down through fermentation. The byproduct of this process is lactic acid, which gradually lowers the milk's pH, making it more acidic. As acidity increases, the milk proteins denature and coagulate, transforming liquid milk into yogurt's characteristic thick, creamy texture. This process happens slowly, over several hours. The bacteria don't rush. They multiply steadily in the warm milk, each generation consuming lactose and producing lactic acid, the increasing acidity eventually slowing their own growth. It's a self-limiting process. The bacteria create conditions that preserve the food, but eventually halt their own reproduction, leaving behind a stable product that can last weeks without spoiling. Humans discovered fermentation accidentally, probably when milk was stored in containers that happened to contain the right bacteria. Instead of rotting, the milk thickened and soured in a pleasant way. People noticed this preserved the milk longer and eventually learned to control the process, saving a bit of successful yogurt to inoculate the next batch. They were cultivating bacterial cultures thousands of years before anyone knew bacteria existed. The same principle applies to countless fermented foods. Sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, sourdough bread, cheese, all depend on bacteria converting sugars and proteins into acids and other compounds that preserve food while creating complex flavors. Each fermented food hosts its own community of bacterial species, working together to transform raw ingredients into something new. These bacteria provide more than preservation. Fermentation increases nutritional value by breaking down compounds that are difficult to digest, producing vitamins like B12 and K2, and creating beneficial compounds that support gut health. The bacteria themselves, still alive in properly made yogurt and other fermented foods, can colonize your digestive system and join your existing gut community. The fermentation process is forgiving. It works across a range of temperatures, though it proceeds faster when warmer and slower when cool. It tolerates variations in starting materials, different milk types, different bacterial ratios. This flexibility made fermentation accessible to cultures worldwide, each developing their own fermented foods based on local ingredients and bacteria. Modern yogurt production follows the same basic process our ancestors discovered, just at industrial scale, with carefully controlled bacterial strains and precise temperature regulation. But the chemistry hasn't changed. The bacteria still consume lactose, still produce lactic acid, still transform milk through the same patient fermentation that's been happening for millennia. When you eat yogurt, you're consuming the result of bacterial work, the proteins they modified, the acids they produced, sometimes the bacteria themselves. It's one of the most intimate relationships between humans and bacteria, inviting specific species into our food supply, giving them ideal conditions to multiply, then eating both their products and their bodies. This ancient partnership continues today in kitchens and factories worldwide. Bacteria transform milk every hour of every day, following the same fermentation pathway they've used since humans first learned to preserve dairy. It's a peaceful process, requiring only time, warmth, and patience, producing food that has nourished countless generations through the simple chemistry of bacterial metabolism. While some bacteria remain grounded, working in soil and food, others have taken to the sky. Bacteria float high in Earth's atmosphere, carried upward by wind currents, traveling thousands of miles above the surface. They don't just survive this aerial journey, they play an essential role in weather itself, serving as nucleation points around which water droplets gather to form clouds and eventually rain. Water vapor needs something solid to condense on. In perfectly pure air, water can remain vapor even when temperatures drop well below the normal condensation point. This phenomenon, called supercooling, creates unstable conditions. Air needs tiny particles, called nuclei, to give water molecules a surface where they can begin forming droplets. Bacteria provide these nuclei, billions of microscopic platforms floating through the atmosphere. Certain bacterial species are particularly effective at ice nucleation. They have proteins on their cell walls that arrange water molecules in patterns similar to ice crystals. Water freezes around these proteins at temperatures much warmer than it would freeze otherwise, sometimes as high as 28 degrees Fahrenheit, just below the normal freezing point. This ability makes bacteria some of the most efficient ice nucleators in nature. These ice nucleating bacteria don't live permanently in the atmosphere. They start on plant leaves, in soil, on ocean surfaces. Wind lifts them gently into the air, where they can travel immense distances, crossing oceans and continents, before eventually settling back to Earth, often carried down by the very rain they helped create. It's a planetary circulation system, bacteria rising from one location and descending in another, connecting distant ecosystems. Scientists estimate that bacteria make up a significant portion of atmospheric biological particles. Every cubic meter of air contains hundreds to thousands of bacterial cells, depending on altitude and location. Most are dormant or dead, but many remain viable, capable of resuming active life if they land in suitable conditions. They're suspended animation travelers, waiting patiently for their atmospheric journey to end. The precipitation these bacteria help create can carry them back to environments where they thrive. Rain seeded by bacteria returns those bacteria to soil and plants, completing the cycle. It's a dispersal mechanism that allows bacteria to colonize new territories, spreading across the globe on weather patterns they themselves influence. This atmospheric presence affects more than just rain. Bacteria in clouds influence how much sunlight reaches Earth's surface by affecting cloud formation and density. More bacteria means more nucleation points, potentially creating more numerous but smaller water droplets. These properties change how clouds reflect sunlight, subtly affecting climate patterns across the planet. Researchers studying climate change now consider bacterial populations when modeling cloud formation and precipitation. The number and types of bacteria in the atmosphere can vary with land use changes, affecting regional weather patterns in ways that are only beginning to be understood. Bacteria aren't passive passengers in Earth's atmosphere. They're active participants in the water cycle. Some bacteria survive in the upper atmosphere for extended periods, enduring intense ultraviolet radiation, extreme temperature fluctuations, and almost complete desiccation. They protect themselves with specialized proteins and DNA repair mechanisms, waiting dormant until conditions improve. It's another example of bacterial patience, existing in suspended animation until opportunity arrives. Tonight, while you rest here on the surface, bacteria float miles above you in the quiet darkness of the upper atmosphere. They ride wind currents you can't feel, travel distances you'll never see, waiting to help form tomorrow's clouds. They've been making this journey for millions of years, connecting sky and earth through their invisible presence. From the heights of the atmosphere, bacteria also inhabit the opposite extreme, miles beneath Earth's surface where no human has ever gone. The deep biosphere, as scientists call it, contains perhaps more bacterial life than exists on the entire surface world. These subsurface bacteria live in rock pores and sediment spaces so deep that sunlight is a distant memory. Pressure is crushing, and time moves at geological speeds. Drilling projects have recovered living bacteria from depths exceeding 3 miles underground. At these depths, temperatures can reach 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Pressure equals thousands of atmospheres, and the environment is completely dark. Yet, bacteria persist, growing so slowly that a single cell might divide just once every 1,000 years. They're living on geological time, experiencing centuries, the way surface bacteria experience days. These deep bacteria don't photosynthesize or consume organic matter from dead plants and animals. They extract energy directly from rocks and minerals through chemical reactions. Some split water molecules to get hydrogen for fuel. Others derive energy from radioactive decay of uranium and thorium in surrounding rock. They've found ways to power life using energy sources that existed before. Photosynthesis evolved before oxygen filled the atmosphere. The water they live in has been isolated from the surface for millions of years, trapped in tiny spaces within solid rock. This ancient water moves incredibly slowly, sometimes just a few meters per million years. Bacteria living in it have been separated from surface ecosystems longer than humans have existed as a species. They're evolutionary islands, developing in complete isolation from the rest of life on Earth. Scientists estimate the deep biosphere contains between 15 and 23 billion tons of carbon in the form of bacterial cells. That's roughly 400 times more carbon than exists in all human bodies combined. This vast hidden ecosystem rivals the surface world in total biomass, yet remains almost completely unexplored because accessing it requires drilling miles through solid rock. These bacteria don't form the complex communities found on the surface. Population densities are extremely low, with individual cells often separated by significant distances. They might go their entire lives without encountering another bacterium. It's one of the loneliest environments imaginable. Yet, bacteria have made it home, content to exist in isolation as long as basic chemical resources remain available. The deep biosphere might represent life's last refuge. If some catastrophe sterilized Earth's surface, these subsurface bacteria would survive completely unaffected, continuing their slow existence in the darkness. They would outlast any surface catastrophe, any climate change, any asteroid impact. They're Earth's ultimate survivors, protected by miles of rock from everything happening above. Some researchers believe that life might have originated in these deep environments, rather than on the surface. Early Earth's surface was bombarded by asteroids and lacked the protective ozone layer that shields us today. Deep underground would have been safer, more stable, with consistent chemical energy available. If this theory is correct, surface life, including us, descended from these deep bacteria, emerging from the depths to colonize the sunlit world above. The existence of the deep biosphere also changes how we think about life elsewhere in the universe. If bacteria can thrive miles underground with no sunlight and minimal resources, then similar life could exist beneath the surfaces of Mars, Europa, or other worlds where surface conditions seem hostile. Life might be common in the universe, just hidden beneath the crust of worlds we've barely begun to explore. Tonight, while you rest on the thin film of life that coats Earth's surface, these deep bacteria continue their patient existence in eternal darkness below, living proof that life needs very little to persist once it takes hold. In their isolated underground colonies and crowded surface communities, bacteria face a common challenge, sharing limited space and resources with countless other organisms. Their solution wasn't warfare, but chemical communication. Bacteria produce antibiotics, not primarily as weapons, but as signaling molecules, gentle chemical conversations that help maintain community balance and regulate population dynamics. The term antibiotic means against life, which suggests these compounds exist solely to kill. But research increasingly shows that at low concentrations, the levels bacteria naturally produce, antibiotics serve more subtle functions. They act as signals between species, regulating gene expression, coordinating behavior, even promoting cooperation between different bacterial types. Only at artificially high concentrations, the kind we create in laboratories, do they become the killing agents we think of as medicine. Penicillin, the first antibiotic discovered for medical use, comes from a fungus, but bacteria produce hundreds of similar compounds. Streptomyces bacteria, common in soil, generate over half of all known natural antibiotics. They release these molecules into their surroundings where other bacteria detect them and respond by adjusting their behavior. Some slow their growth. Others activate stress response genes. Many simply alter their metabolism to coexist more efficiently. In natural environments, antibiotic-producing bacteria rarely kill their neighbors completely. Instead, these chemicals help maintain diversity by preventing any single species from dominating. When one bacterial population grows too large, antibiotic-producing species increase their output, slowing the dominant species without eliminating it. The system self-regulates, maintaining ecological balance through chemical feedback loops. Bacteria that produce antibiotics also protect themselves from their own compounds. They've evolved resistance mechanisms, chemical pumps that push antibiotics back out of their cells, or enzymes that modify the molecules to make them harmless. This isn't a recent adaptation to human medicine. It's an ancient strategy that evolved millions of years before humans existed. Antibiotic resistance genes are as old as antibiotics themselves. The soil beneath your feet is full of these chemical conversations. Bacteria constantly release low levels of antibiotics, detect compounds from neighbors, and adjust their behavior accordingly. It's a complex network of molecular diplomacy happening in every gram of Earth, maintaining the delicate balance that allows thousands of species to coexist in close quarters. When Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin in 1928, he noticed that fungus contaminating his bacterial cultures created clear zones where bacteria wouldn't grow. He interpreted this as killing, and he was right at the high concentrations the fungus produced in laboratory conditions. But he'd stumbled onto something bacteria and fungi had been doing for hundreds of millions of years, using chemistry to communicate and compete. Modern medicine extracts these compounds, purifies them, and administers them at doses far higher than anything found in nature. At these concentrations, antibiotics do kill bacteria effectively, saving countless lives from infections that would have been fatal a century ago. But we're using ancient bacterial tools in new ways, amplifying natural chemical signals into powerful medicines. The challenge now is that bacteria are adapting to these unnaturally high antibiotic concentrations. We're forcing them to evolve stronger resistance than they ever needed in nature, creating a medical arms race. Yet, the solution might lie in understanding the original purpose of these compounds, how bacteria use them at natural concentrations to maintain balance rather than wage war. Your gut bacteria produce their own antibiotics, keeping harmful species under control without eliminating the diversity that keeps you healthy. They're using these ancient chemical tools, the way bacteria always have, as signals and regulators rather than weapons, maintaining the peaceful community balance that benefits everyone. The chemical signals your gut bacteria use to maintain their own communities don't stay in your digestive system. They travel throughout your body, crossing the barrier between gut and brain, influencing your thoughts, emotions, and even your sleep patterns. The connection between your microbial partners and your mental state is so strong that scientists now refer to the gut as your second brain, and the bacteria living there as silent architects of your mood. Your gut contains over 100 million neurons, more than your spinal cord. These neurons form the enteric nervous system, which communicates constantly with your brain through the vagus nerve, a biological highway running from your abdomen to your skull. Gut bacteria influence this communication by producing neurotransmitters, the same chemicals your brain uses to regulate mood and behavior. About 90% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with happiness and well-being, is produced in your gut with bacterial assistance. Certain bacterial species stimulate the cells lining your intestines to manufacture serotonin. Others produce it directly. This gut-derived serotonin doesn't cross into your brain, but it affects the signals traveling up the vagus nerve, influencing how your brain regulates mood, anxiety, and sleep. Bacteria also produce gamma-aminobutyric acid, known as GABA, your brain's primary calming neurotransmitter. GABA reduces neural activity, creating the mental quietness necessary for sleep. When your gut bacteria produce GABA, it affects local neurons in your digestive system, which in turn influence the signals reaching your brain. A healthy, balanced gut microbiome helps maintain the GABA levels that promote relaxation and restful sleep. The bacterial influence extends to your stress response. Certain beneficial bacteria help regulate cortisol, your primary stress hormone. Studies show that people with diverse, healthy gut bacteria respond less intensely to stress, experiencing lower anxiety and better emotional stability. The bacteria achieve this by affecting how your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis functions, the system that controls your stress response. Your sleep-wake cycle depends partially on bacterial activity. Gut bacteria follow circadian rhythms, as we discussed earlier, and their metabolic activity influences your own biological clock. They produce compounds at different times of day that affect your energy levels and sleep pressure. When bacteria are disrupted through antibiotics, poor diet, or irregular eating patterns, your sleep often suffers as a consequence. Recent research shows that specific bacterial species correlate with better sleep quality. People with more diverse gut bacteria tend to sleep longer and wake less during the night. The mechanisms aren't fully understood yet, but bacteria appear to influence sleep through multiple pathways, producing sleep-promoting compounds, regulating inflammation, and maintaining the gut-brain communication that helps coordinate your body's daily rhythms. This relationship works both ways. Poor sleep disrupts your gut bacteria, reducing diversity and shifting the balance toward less beneficial species. It's a feedback loop where bacteria affect sleep and sleep affects bacteria. Maintaining this relationship requires the same things that benefit both parties: regular meal times, diverse nutrition, stress management, and consistent sleep schedules. The bacteria in your gut right now are actively working to help you sleep. They're producing neurotransmitters, processing your evening meal, maintaining the chemical balance that signals to your brain that rest is appropriate. They've been doing this work every night of your life, invisible partners in the daily rhythm of waking and sleeping. Understanding this connection makes bacterial care feel less abstract. When you eat fermented foods, maintain regular sleep schedules, or manage stress effectively, you're not just helping yourself, you're supporting the trillions of organisms whose chemical signals shape your mental state and sleep quality. While individual bacteria influence your sleep through chemical signals, they achieve their greatest accomplishments by working together. Bacteria form structures called biofilms, sophisticated communities where millions or billions of cells cooperate to achieve what no single bacterium could accomplish alone. These aren't random clusters, but organized societies with division of labor, shared resources, and collective defense systems. A biofilm begins when a single bacterium attaches to a surface and starts dividing. As the population grows, cells begin secreting a sticky matrix of proteins, sugars, and DNA that glues them together and anchors them to the surface. This matrix becomes the foundation of their community, a protective coating that shields residents from threats while allowing nutrients to flow through channels that bacteria actively maintain. Inside a biofilm, bacteria don't all perform the same function. Some cells near the surface continue growing and dividing rapidly, taking advantage of abundant nutrients and oxygen. Deeper cells enter a slower metabolic state, conserving energy in the less favorable conditions. Still others produce the matrix material that holds the community together. Some sacrifice themselves entirely, lysing their cell walls to release DNA that strengthens the biofilm structure and provides nutrients for neighbors. This division of labor emerges without central coordination. Bacteria respond to local chemical signals and physical conditions, each cell following simple rules that create complex community-level organization. It's like how ant colonies function, individual organisms following basic behavioral patterns that produce sophisticated collective behavior. Biofilms form on virtually every surface that stays wet long enough. The slippery coating on river rocks is biofilm. The plaque on your teeth is biofilm. Your gut lining is coated with beneficial biofilms that protect against harmful bacteria. Medical implants, ship hulls, water pipes all develop bacterial communities within hours of exposure to moisture. Life in a biofilm offers bacteria significant advantages. The matrix protects them from antibiotics, immune cells, and other threats that would kill free-floating bacteria. Nutrients and waste products can be shared through the community's internal channels. Genetic material transfers more easily between neighboring cells, allowing beneficial adaptations to spread through the population. Some estimates suggest bacteria in biofilms can be up to 1,000 times more resistant to antibiotics than the same species living individually. The cooperation extends to different species forming mixed biofilms. In your mouth, hundreds of bacterial species coexist in complex, layered communities. Early colonizers attach first, then produce signals that attract other species. These later arrivals attach to the initial bacteria rather than the tooth surface, building multi-story structures where different species occupy different levels, each contributing to the community's overall stability. Biofilms communicate with their environment. When nutrients become scarce, cells at the biofilm's edges can detach and swim away to find new locations. If conditions improve, the biofilm sends signals that prevent this dispersal. The community regulates its own size and density through chemical feedback, maintaining optimal conditions for all residents. Your immune system has learned to coexist with beneficial biofilms while fighting harmful ones. The biofilms in your gut actually help train your immune system, teaching it to distinguish friend from foe. Without these bacterial communities, your immune system would either attack your own tissues or fail to respond to genuine threats. Watching a biofilm form under a microscope reveals something profound about cooperation. Cells that could survive independently choose to give up some autonomy for the benefits of community life. They build structures together, share resources, sacrifice for neighbors, all through simple chemical interactions that produce remarkable collective outcomes. It's cooperation at its most fundamental level, older than any society humans have built. These cooperative bacterial communities don't just maintain your body or colonize surfaces. Some perform work that sustains the entire planet. Cyanobacteria, those ancient oxygen producers we discussed earlier, continue their original mission today. They're still photosynthesizing in oceans and lakes, still releasing oxygen molecule by molecule, maintaining the atmosphere they spent billions of years creating. Cyanobacteria produce between 20 and 30% of all oxygen generated on Earth each year. That means every third or fourth breath you take comes from bacterial photosynthesis happening right now in the ocean. Plants and algae produce the rest, but they descended from cyanobacteria. Every photosynthetic organism on Earth inherited its ability from these ancient bacteria, either through evolution or by absorbing cyanobacteria billions of years ago and converting them into chloroplasts. The most abundant photosynthetic organism on Earth is a cyanobacterium called Prochlorococcus. Despite being smaller than a red blood cell, so tiny that billions fit in a teaspoon of seawater, Prochlorococcus accounts for a significant portion of marine photosynthesis. Scientists estimate there are 3 billion individual Prochlorococcus cells in the ocean, a number so large it's difficult to comprehend. Together, they produce roughly 10% of Earth's annual oxygen supply. These bacteria don't just float randomly. They position themselves at specific depths where light levels match their needs. Different strains have adapted to different light intensities, creating layers in the water column where each strain thrives. Near the surface, highlight adapted strains absorb intense sunlight. Deeper down, low light strains capture the dimmer rays that penetrate further into the ocean. They've divided the available light spectrum among themselves, maximizing total photosynthetic efficiency. The process they use is essentially identical to the one that evolved 3 billion years ago. They capture photons from sunlight using chlorophyll. This energy splits water molecules, releasing oxygen as a byproduct, while using the hydrogen to build sugars from carbon dioxide. It's the same chemical transformation that changed Earth's atmosphere, still running continuously, maintaining the oxygen balance that keeps the planet habitable. Without cyanobacteria, atmospheric oxygen levels would gradually decline. Other organisms consume oxygen constantly through respiration and combustion. Dead organic matter decomposing removes oxygen from the atmosphere. Weathering of rocks binds oxygen into minerals. If photosynthesis stopped tomorrow, oxygen would remain abundant for thousands of years, but it would slowly decrease as consumption continued without replenishment. Cyanobacteria face increasing challenges from ocean warming, acidification, and nutrient pollution. Changes in ocean chemistry affect their growth rates and distribution. Yet, they've survived worse. They lived through Earth's greatest extinction events, adapted to dramatic climate shifts, persisted through conditions that killed countless other species. Their ability to photosynthesize in diverse conditions, from hot springs to Antarctic lakes, suggests they'll continue their work regardless of how much we alter the planet. In freshwater lakes, cyanobacteria sometimes bloom in visible numbers, creating green or blue-green layers on the water surface. These blooms are often considered problems, especially when they produce toxins. But they're also demonstrations of bacterial productivity. A single bloom can fix massive amounts of carbon dioxide and release corresponding amounts of oxygen, temporarily supercharging the local oxygen cycle. Every time you inhale, you're breathing the product of continuous bacterial effort. The oxygen in your lungs right now might have been released by a cyanobacterium floating in the Pacific last week, or by an ancestor of that bacterium 3 billion years ago. The oxygen atoms recycle through the atmosphere, used by breathing organisms, returned by photosynthetic ones, in a cycle that cyanobacteria have maintained since they first evolved this remarkable ability. While cyanobacteria follow the sun, another group of bacteria follows Earth's magnetic field. Magnetotactic bacteria contain tiny crystals of magnetite or greigite, iron-based minerals that act as internal compasses. These microscopic magnets align the bacteria with the planet's magnetic field lines, allowing them to navigate through water and sediment with remarkable precision. Each bacterium contains a chain of magnetic crystals enclosed in membrane-bound compartments called magnetosomes. These aren't random iron deposits, but perfectly formed crystals arranged in a line through the cell's center, creating a miniature bar magnet. The bacteria grow these crystals themselves, controlling their size, shape, and arrangement with genetic precision. The result is one of nature's most elegant navigation systems, a biological compass that operates without any conscious control. The bacteria use this magnetic sense to find their preferred depth in water or sediment. Earth's magnetic field lines angle downward in the northern hemisphere and upward in the southern hemisphere. Bacteria in the north swim downward by following field lines, while southern bacteria swim upward following the opposite angle. This brings them to the interface between oxygen-rich surface water and oxygen-poor depths, where many species find optimal conditions. Scientists discovered these bacteria by accident in the 1960s, when a microbiologist noticed that bacteria in his samples always swam in the same direction relative to the room, not relative to the light or any obvious chemical gradient. When he brought a magnet near the microscope, the bacteria changed direction, following the magnet's field. They were orienting to Earth's magnetic field, something no one had suspected bacteria could sense. The magnetic crystals inside these bacteria are so perfectly formed that materials scientists study them to improve synthetic magnet production. Each crystal has optimal size and shape for magnetic properties, grown at room temperature using only biological processes. Humans require high temperatures and harsh chemicals to create similar magnetic particles. Yet, bacteria manufacture them effortlessly inside their cells. Magnetotactic bacteria live in water around the world, from freshwater ponds to ocean sediments. They're not rare, with populations reaching millions of cells per milliliter in ideal locations. You've almost certainly been near them without knowing, swimming in lakes or walking through marshes, where these bacteria navigate invisibly through the water, using Earth's magnetic field as their guide. The magnetosomes serve another purpose beyond navigation. The magnetic crystals are pure minerals that persist long after the bacteria die. These fossilized magnetosomes accumulate in sediments, creating a geological record of magnetic bacterial activity stretching back millions of years. Paleontologists study these ancient magnetosomes to understand past environments and bacterial evolution. Some researchers believe similar magnetic bacteria might exist on Mars. The planet has iron-rich rocks and once had liquid water, the basic requirements for magnetotactic bacteria. If such organisms evolved there, their fossilized magnetosomes would be among the most durable biosignatures, surviving long after other traces of life had vanished. Finding magnetic crystals in Martian rock with the characteristic sizes and arrangements seen in terrestrial magnetosomes would strongly suggest biological origin. These bacteria represent another example of how life solves problems through elegant simplicity. Instead of complex sensory organs or nervous systems, magnetotactic bacteria use physics directly, growing magnets inside themselves to interact with Earth's global magnetic field. They've been doing this for millions of years, navigating with perfect reliability, using a sense that humans only discovered through technology. Tonight, in ponds and streams nearby, these bacteria swim through darkness, their internal compasses aligned with the same magnetic field that guides human compasses and migrating birds. They move slowly, purposefully, following invisible lines of force that connect them to the planet itself. While magnetotactic bacteria navigate actively through their environment, some bacteria have mastered the opposite strategy: perfect stillness. When conditions become unfavorable, certain species transform into spores, dormant structures that can survive for thousands or even millions of years, waiting patiently for the right moment to awaken. It's suspended animation at the cellular level. Life paused, but not ended. The transformation into a spore is a controlled shutdown. The bacterium copies its DNA, wraps it in multiple protective layers, removes most water from inside the cell, and builds a nearly impenetrable coating around everything. The resulting spore can withstand temperatures that would boil water, radiation levels that would kill most organisms instantly, complete desiccation, crushing pressure, even the vacuum of space. It's one of the most resilient structures in nature. Inside a spore, metabolism doesn't just slow down, it essentially stops. The spore isn't growing, isn't consuming nutrients, isn't responding to its environment. It's waiting, encoded with the genetic information and cellular machinery needed to restart life when conditions improve. Time passes differently for a spore. Hours, years, centuries feel the same because nothing is happening. The spore simply endures. Scientists have revived bacterial spores from amber dated to millions of years ago. Others have been recovered from ancient salt deposits, from ice cores, from the stomachs of preserved insects. One famous case involved spores extracted from a 250 million-year-old salt crystal. When placed in nutrient broth, these ancient spores germinated and began dividing, resuming life after a dormancy longer than the entire history of mammals. The spore's awakening is as remarkable as its dormancy. When it detects favorable conditions, specific molecules, warmth, moisture, it begins absorbing water. The protective layers break down from the inside. The DNA unwinds. Within hours, the spore transforms back into an active bacterial cell that starts growing and dividing as if no time had passed. The bacterium carries no memory of its dormancy, no record of the centuries spent waiting. This ability to pause life makes spores incredibly effective at colonizing new environments. A spore can travel on wind currents, float in ocean water, stick to animal fur, or hide in soil for decades until conditions become suitable. When the right moment arrives, it activates and begins a new bacterial colony. It's a patient strategy, sacrificing immediate reproduction for long-term survival and dispersal. Some bacterial spores exist in your home right now. Bacillus species form spores that contaminate dust, survive on surfaces indefinitely, and resist most cleaning methods. Most are harmless, just waiting for conditions that might never come. They could remain dormant on your shelf for years, neither alive in the active sense nor truly dead, just existing in this strange intermediate state. The spore teaches us something about time and patience. These bacteria have evolved to wait through conditions that would kill actively growing cells. to survive periods when life seems impossible, trusting that eventually, maybe centuries later, circumstances will improve. They don't struggle or adapt or fight. They simply stop, preserve themselves perfectly, and wait with infinite patience for their moment to return. In soil, in water, in the air you breathe, bacterial spores exist by the billions, most of them dormant, waiting. Some will germinate tomorrow when rain arrives or temperature rises. Others might wait decades or centuries before conditions align. A few might remain dormant forever, their potential lives never realized, their patience never rewarded. But the strategy works well enough that spore-forming bacteria have persisted for hundreds of millions of years, proving that sometimes the best response to adversity is simply to pause and wait. As you settle deeper into rest, remember what you've learned tonight. Bacteria aren't just invisible organisms occupying space around you. They're your oldest companions, partners who have walked alongside every form of life since existence began. They built the air you breathe, the soil that feeds you, the cycles that sustain the planet. They live within you, on you, around you, performing countless tasks that make your life possible. From the moment you were born, bacteria have been with you. They colonized your skin, your mouth, your digestive system, establishing the communities that protect your health. They've been producing vitamins you can't make yourself, training your immune system, influencing your mood and sleep. Every meal you eat feeds both you and them. Every breath you take was made possible by their 3 billion-year effort to oxygenate Earth's atmosphere. These partnerships aren't accidents. They're the result of billions of years of evolution, countless generations of bacteria adapting to life alongside larger organisms, developing relationships that benefit everyone involved. The bacteria in your gut are as adapted to living with humans as you are to having them. You're not a single organism, but a walking ecosystem, a cooperative venture between human cells and bacterial partners. And the bacteria beyond your body continue their essential work without pause. In soil, they're breaking down organic matter, fixing nitrogen, cycling nutrients that plants need to grow. In oceans, they're producing oxygen, forming the base of food chains, maintaining the chemical balance that keeps Earth habitable. In the atmosphere, they're seeding clouds, traveling on wind currents, connecting distant ecosystems. Deep underground, they persist in conditions that seem impossible, proving that life needs very little to endure. They communicate through chemical signals, coordinate their activities through quorum sensing, form cooperative communities in biofilms where millions work together. They produce light in ocean darkness, navigate using Earth's magnetic field, enter dormancy that can last millennia. They've solved problems that humans only recently discovered existed, and they've done it with elegance and efficiency that we're still trying to understand. The most remarkable thing about bacteria is their patience. They don't rush or panic or struggle against circumstances. They simply exist, adapting when necessary, cooperating when beneficial, waiting when conditions demand it. They've survived every catastrophe Earth has thrown at life, every extinction event, every climate shift, every environmental challenge. They were here billions of years before humans evolved, and they'll be here billions of years after we're gone. Tonight, as you close your eyes and let sleep take you, your bacterial partners continue their quiet work. They're processing your evening meal, producing calming neurotransmitters, maintaining the communities that keep you healthy. They're following their circadian rhythms, synchronized with your body's cycles, preparing for the rest period they know is coming. They don't need your awareness or gratitude. They simply do what they've always done, existing peacefully alongside you, invisible companions in the ancient journey of life on Earth. You are never alone. You never have been. From your first breath to this moment, bacteria have surrounded you, supported you, sustained you. They're part of what makes you human, part of what makes Earth alive. As you surrender to sleep, trust in their constant presence, their patient work, their gentle persistence through billions of years of evolutionary time. Rest now, knowing that the invisible world continues its ancient rhythms, that life's smallest citizens maintain the foundation upon which everything else depends. Let their patience inspire your own peace, their endurance comfort your rest, their quiet existence remind you that life persists through simplicity, cooperation, and endless, gentle patience. If you enjoyed this journey into the microscopic world, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. Tomorrow night, we'll explore another corner of science designed to help you sleep peacefully. Sweet dreams.